know, as you say, it's pretty much required anyway, and might as well have it very clearly spelled out so that if you're an elected official or an employee, you know very clearly that all of this is open to be grammar requested and looked at, and even communications on our personal cell phones. And if you're conducting city business through text messages, if you are texting council members or anybody in the audience during council meetings, you're breaking the law. And so I have no problem with this. I think that council feels that what is currently in place is sufficient. Let's think on it for a while, and maybe the next council might feel differently.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Oh, yay. Call to the public. Can you get me that? Thanks. Zane Larson.
Thank you. I want to address what Councilmember Page said earlier, and I agree with you about when it's such a low voter turnout, and I'm referencing when you're talking about fiber and the low voter percentage turnout. Where if you do vote on things, it can be a minority forcing majority to do something, and I agree with you, and I agree with the discussion like what Dean Story was saying about why there's a range on the services being offered, and that's the problems, and that is why government is the wrong entity to supply fiber or to supply a service. It's outside the role of the government, and because it's requiring people to essentially sign on a line, even if they means not replying, it means they will sign on this line with incomplete information. They are forced to make a decision with incomplete information because the government's doing it. And there's no other way out of it. That you guys have to know what the take rate is, how many people are going to be involved to know what the price is. That very understandable, but that's why government's the wrong entity to be doing it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Nephi Harvey.
Mayor, I am not your sunshine. On July 2, you kicked him out and you spearheaded this for saying a benign term of sweetheart. I'm offended that you would call me your sunshine, jokingly, funnily, or just plain to get me out of here. I'm offended by it. Why don't you vote yourself out? Why don't you gavel yourself? That was offensive, it was wrong, it was a bad move. I am not your sunshine. The rest of you guys, I'm appalled by what you guys keep doing here. You claim to listen to us. You claim to listen to us, and you don't. You've made your decisions up before you ever come into this room. You, the missing one in the middle, and you. You don't listen. You don't put up with any of this. You know what your decision is before you come into the room. You don't care. That's why the vote was so important. That's why the vote that you, and Mr. Missing here said would happen was so important to all of us, because it was our vote. It was the way on such an important matter that we had a say into it. Opt-out is a farce. It is dishonest. And you, and Mr. Missing here all knew that. You went into this knowing it. You looked up the stats. You knew what opt-out means, and I'm glad you're nodding your head gently there because you knew it. You knew it. You looked it up. Terrible.
Thank you.
Tim Hodges.
Wish you could comment on you commenting on that. It's okay for you to make snide after remarks, Councilmember Page? Oh, we heard your tone up here.
Go ahead.
All right, it's your time.
That's
Welcome.
fine.
Thank you.
Council, Mayor, I want to caution how y'all are doing these things. I understand that Mr. Page talked about, sending these surveys, because they're not ballots. There's nothing binding about them. But they're sending these surveys to the homes, and they're saying that that's going to be a more of an accurate measurement of, whether or not people want this, or it's going to be better than the ballot. I disagree with that, because just for the reason that it's an opt-out policy. Because, like I said, so many times people get things from the city and they just throw them in the trash. So their default opt-in, are they really a yes? I mean, are we really looking at these ones that are opting in versus a default opt-in? Maybe we should distinguish that. Maybe we should sit there and say, hey, the ones who are default opt-in aren't really yeses, they're maybes. I mean, maybe we should look at that, because the fact is, they didn't make a choice. So if we're going to sit there and say, well, we're putting these surveys out so everybody has a choice, and they don't send it back, how can we sit there and say, well, they defaulted their choice, and we're going to give that to them? Well, I don't think that's right. That's not in essence of what y'all are saying y'all are wanting to do. The fact of the matter, the vote, like I said, it may not be the best way, but it's how our founding fathers set it up. That's how we're supposed to be doing things with a vote, especially when this many tax dollars are on the line, and a 30-year endeavor on arguably an old tech. I mean, it was established pretty well in the 70s, and we're on the back nine of it. Is fiber the future? I don't know. I'm not a techie person. Never have been, don't want to be. I ride my horses, I'm good to go. But the fact of the matter is we don't know in 30 years where this is going. You look up, wireless internet, people say, well, there's no wireless connection today that can compete with hard cable. And you're right, today it isn't. But technology is advancing in a rapid pace. You can buy a car now, you throw your phone in the car and it charges wirelessly. Everything's going wireless. You know why? Because the maintenance cost is way better. Nobody wants to drill caveman power lines into the ground, because there's freezing, there's a lot of stuff, dummies that get out there with their horses tromping around and breaks lines, namely me. Things happen. It's not a good way. But putting it to the vote would be the best way. And that's how representative democracy makes sure that they're in check with the people, and they checking and balancing their powers. They're not just sitting there running away with it. And council should caution y'all, whenever you sit there and go out and say you're going to do a vote and then materially change your position, that's what judiciaries look at for self-dealing. And that's something that y'all should really think about. Time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick Lewis.
I'll be short. It got really cold last winter here in Kaysville. It got really cold here in Kaysville last winter, and I was out doing some shopping, and I actually saw some of the city leaders with their hands in their own pockets. Another thing, I think all of you ought to have cell phones, and you ought to be required to wear them 24/7. I really do, because that's what they do to prisoners. Think about that. That's the same as wearing that ankle bracelet. The other issue, my third item, is the missing forms that never get turned in. The other 35% that aren't registered to vote, I think those should be counted in the opt-out stack. It's unfair to count them as all in. If they don't turn them in, it should be a no. Pure and simple. Otherwise, you're, what was it? Somebody was complaining that they didn't like the fence on the cemetery because it was interfering with some of the people who were voting. You know, if they're, don't turn them in, it should be a no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jacob Willoughby.
Hi, I'd just like to reintroduce myself. I was here 2 weeks ago, but not everybody else out there may have been. I've lived in Kaysville all of my life, 35 years. I want to make my comments to everybody in here. I've been married 8 years, moved to Kaysville. My wife and I look for a 30-year home. We're here to stay. Kaysville's where I want to be. I just want to say that the fiber project for me is about choice. And some of you in here are angry about the fiber project, find that so ironic that I say that. But it's about choice for me because there's only one provider out there right now that I can buy internet from that meets my needs. I work in Lehigh, and I've had to commute to Lehigh several times because my home internet upload speed is not fast enough. And there is not enough money I can pay. There's not a single provider out there that I can pay more money to give me a fast enough upload speed. I cannot give Comcast any more money to get my upload speed any faster. So the fiber project is really important to me to have that choice. And I really like that I think Larry Page is being very wise to counsel us that the government is very messy in how it goes about there. So I feel like the process has been really rocky with fiber, but I think it's going in the right direction. We see that the City Council has listened to feedback. People now have complete opt-outs to where they don't have to pay anything. That is not something that was originally there, that came about because of people talking about it. And so I really like that. If people, I understand how people might not like fiber, and if they opt out, they don't have to pay for it. And I really like that. And you know, maybe there's some way that the bond could come back to harm all citizens, but I think the City Council is listening to that. And maybe we can think about it for a little bit longer and find out a way that it doesn't, or find out a way to mitigate that risk. I do like that the bond is completely paid by the revenues of the people that opt in, or sorry, the people that don't opt out. The revenue, the bond is completely covered by that. So there's not, this is completely independent of any other expenses. I hope you're listening in there, Mr. Adams. Because I'm kind of here to have you listen to me as well. And I've been speaking to lots of people about it. I talked to all my neighbors about fiber. I encourage them to submit their survey or submit the opt-out form. I really don't care which way people submit. I just think it's important that everybody goes and submits the paperwork. And I am not a lawyer, but I believe if there's one signature on the opt-out page, you can strike out things and then sign it and then send it in. I'm not a lawyer, don't take that as legal advice, ask your lawyer, but I think you can do that. It's a one-party contract. I believe my time's almost up, but I just want to say, I think the fiber project is a great idea and I hope it goes through.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, all right. Anything pressing from,
Councilman report?
okay, city manager report. Okay. I think we are to motion to adjourn.
I just got a quick couple things. Larry, knock it off. What is the TAC doing going door to door, the lanyard? Is that official TAC business?
No, that is an independent citizen committee that is much like the Anti-Fiber Coalition. So, it is the I'll just call it the coalition. So similar to the coalition, it's people who want the fiber, and it has nothing to do with the city.
So what is the lanyard they're wearing though?
Those are lanyards that they must have made up. That had nothing
Do they
to
have
do
any,
with us.
is there anything
It had
referencing
nothing-
Kaysville City on the lanyard?
It says Kaysville on it, but they did.
Excuse me?
It has nothing to do with city
Hold
government.
on. I want to see these lanyards. Andre, does it say Kaysville on the lanyard? I just caution you to be careful.
All right, thank you very much. Motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Reconvene.
Immediately.
All right.